Alright, so this is the beginning of my creative project. The subject of my creative project is on Diaspora and diasporic literature. So I'm going to start with saying that I didn't know what to expect out of this project. I began it at the beginning of the semester. What I did is, seeing that we could do a creative project for this, and that it could be a personal creative project, I picked doing an audio form. What I did for this is I went on to 23andMe, which is a Ancestry DNA kit website. So what the website does is it gives you options for DNA kits that you can have. The option that I picked was DNA and health, but I'm only going to be talking about the DNA version. The DNA is like my ancestry to see where I come from. So before I even started this project, I know my mom's side. I don't know my dad's side. I know my mom's side because I grew up with only my mom. I didn't really know anything about my dad other than the fact that I'm his lineage. The only thing I know about his side of the family is what my mom told me. She told me that it is English and Czechoslovakian. And that's the extent of how I know my father's side. My dad's side. No, my father's side. So before this project, I know on my mom's side that I was Irish and French and English, mainly. I didn't know if there was anything else in there. I did hear that I was part Germanic, but I don't know how far down the line that was. So this 23andMe DNA kit is a DNA kit that you buy. It's quite pricey, but considering what it goes through, it's understandable. And within a couple weeks, you get the kit itself. You can't have anything 30 minutes, like you can't eat or drink anything 30 minutes before you do the spit test. You have to fill a vial with 2 millimeters of your spit. Now, if anyone's eaten saltine crackers and tried to swallow them in like 2 minutes, it is ridiculously hard. That's kind of what it feels like when you can't really produce that much spit. So the spit goes into the vial, you seal the vial up, it's got a send back code on it. You take it to the post office and they handle it and they send it off to the thing. 6 to 12 weeks later, I get an email, and the email told me that my 23andMe DNA kit was processed. I thought, okay, I will take a look later. I was in the middle of classes when I got the email. So what ended up happening was I had known all my life that I was English and French and Irish and Czechoslovakian. What I didn't know was the fact that I had Icelandic. I did in fact have Germanic. I had Swiss. I didn't know I had Swiss. I had Greek. To see that I had a whole lot more in my ancestry is very strange to me. To see that I'm Greek, Balkan, Icelandic, and Swiss. To have those kinds of ancestry parts in my DNA, it was super surprising to me because I didn't expect myself to have something that is broader than a main English, French, Irish background, considering that my grandmother on my mom's side is first generation Canadian straight from Brittany, France region. My grandfather on my mom's side is third or fourth generation Irish. The thing is that the Irish could potentially come from the English invading the Irish, which kind of scares me and gives me a sense of, am I really Irish? Do I have that form of nationality? Another thing is, where exactly do I stand in all these different pies of ancestry? I have my hands in so many different pies that I don't know exactly where I fit. I've always been proud of being Irish first. I like being Irish. I like the idea that my ancestry is so rich and deep in this Celtic nature. I'm not a huge fan of being an English descendant due to the fact of how England treated a whole bunch of other countries and colonies and civilizations. The French is just a whole nother section that I'm proud of it, yes, and I can speak a little bit, yes, but I don't know as much about my French lineage as I think I could. I know more about my Irish heritage than anything else due to my grandfather on my mom's side held on to everything. He had pictures, he had a whole bunch of stories, and unfortunately he's passed now. So I can't exactly ask him any more questions. What happened or where I come from on that side. For my grandmother on my mom's side, when she came to Canada, she was in Lac La Biche, Alberta. The reason that she doesn't talk about her lineage and ancestry that much is because in Alberta and when she went to school, she was ridiculed for knowing French and being French and speaking French, and English was her second language. By the time she got to high school, she didn't want to be French. She wanted to be normal in English. She let go of a whole bunch of stuff. That was her French lineage. She let go of her language. She let go of her culture. It's kind of sad that she grew up hating being French. Her and her 7 sisters were all ridiculed for being French in a primarily English-speaking town in the middle of the prairies, in the middle of pretty much nowhere. So I don't know a lot about my French side, other than the fact that I come from Brittany, France, and I most likely have ancestors and relatives there. I probably have a whole bunch of ancestors and relatives living in Ireland. But to not know a lot about the French side, which is a huge chunk of my ancestry, it's kind of hard, because I would like to know more, but the facts just aren't there anymore. My grandma's pretty old, so she wouldn't have a whole bunch of knowledge. And her sisters, unfortunately, most of them have passed away, and I sometimes don't feel comfortable talking to the ones that are alive just because I'm so much younger than them and I didn't really grow up knowing them. And then there's the fact that I don't know anything on my dad's side. I always thought I was Czechoslovakian. I am Slovakian, but I do have a whole bunch of other facts in my DNA core that I didn't know about, and I don't think I would have ever known about it unless I took this test. So to find out, I have Polish, I have Swiss, I have Greek, I'm Balkan. It's kind of a culture shock to think, oh, you have these in your core. You are part of these sections. To think about that is I have so many more pies to put my hands in that I don't even know where to begin if I want to start an ancestry tree or if I even want to look at it, because it's so much information so quickly. And I'm such a melted down pot of so many different nations and countries and cultures that I don't think I could ever really stick to one. The fact that I am very proud of 2 of my nations, I don't know if I'll ever give up that pride. It's very surprising to me that I've come to know that I'm not just a handful of nationalities or ancestry, that I have more than that. It's kind of hard to think about. I don't know if I've come to terms yet with it. It's very weird for me. Being proud of being Irish and French has always come number 1 to me, simply because that I grew up with my grandma and my grandpa, and they were always there, and I always had that kind of connection to stuff like that. I was always super into St. Patrick's Day and super into French culture, French food, French speaking. I took French in high school. French is my second language. Mind you, I'm only conversational in it, but I still have it as my second language, and I'm still very proud of being French. Proud that my grandma stood up and decided that she wasn't going to take the ridicule and that she was going to stay in Canada, in this country, grow up under an English rule. She had then moved to Vancouver and met my grandfather on my mom's side. I'm super proud that I did this test for this class. If it wasn't for this class, I don't think I would have gotten the guts to be like, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get this DNA kit and I'm going to see where I come from. Have I had any hardships or obstacles faced by members of my own family influenced my view of the world? Somewhat. I've noticed the world with a cleaner lens than I would have if I was more proud of my English heritage. I believe I've seen the horrors in a brighter light, so to say, of what England has done, rather than being proud of being English. Not that being English is a bad thing, but it comes with a lot of stigma. And then there's also the fact that I didn't even know I was German, which I don't know what that stems from. If it stems from a lack of knowing, or if it stems from a sign of like Nazi Germany or pre-Nazi Germany where we didn't really talk about it simply because the stigma around being German was very, very racist and very fascist. So I don't know about that. And then the fact that I don't even have the link to my father's side to ask a whole bunch of questions on that side, which I'm kind of glad that I don't have that link, simply for the fact of who my father was personally. To have the lack of link kind of gives me a sense of loss, where I can't ask those questions because the people that could give me the answers don't exist in my relationships. I don't have that connection to talk about. How might you use their stories and experiences to inform my own life, if at all? I've pretty much taken my grandma and her story and been like, you know what? I am not going to take flack for it. I'm not going to take flack for who I am and where I come from. I'm going to try and be proud, or as proud as I can be, from where I come from. And I will take certain prides with grains of salt, because I know that there is not stigma, but there's histories behind some of the nations that my DNA comes from. So I will take her perspective into my own and go forth in the world to, not to be prideful, but to be aware of who I am and observant of my interactions because of who I am. Why did my family choose to leave their country of origin? For my grandma's family, there's 7 kids. There was a lot of mouths to feed, and there was not a lot of room in Brittany, France. And so they came over here in the 1900s, early 1900s, and they started a farm in Alberta, and they made a living like that. For my grandfather's side, we traced it back all the way to the 1800s. I don't think we went past that, so I know we don't have anything in our records of the 1700s yet, but I'm still doing some digging. So what we found is that they came here due to famine and hardship and poverty, and they moved to Tisdale, Saskatchewan, which I have visited. Pretty nice. Well, it's nice in the fact that it's quaint and small, and it's a very huge farming community. So to see that my grandfather and his brother, who I don't know because he died young, to see that they grew up there, and to see that they had the instinct of, okay, we have to count our money, we have to count our crops, we need every piece of our crop to be sold or for us. It's the same as it was when I was growing up. I grew up on a farm, not a traditional farm, but a produce farm. So we sold Christmas trees in the winter, and we sold berries and potatoes and hazelnuts in the spring and summer. When I was growing up, money came from crops, as well as when my grandfather and grandmother had retired out of their day jobs originally. But they had taught me the ideas of count your money. I believe the grain of poverty is still in my blood, even if that whole section turns up as bogus, that I have ingrained into me, like, okay, you've got the potato famine history ingrained into you, you've got the war history ingrained into you, you've got all this stuff ingrained into your body, and this is how your DNA reacts with your mind, and this is how you're going to go forth in the world. Show that you have these histories connected to you. I don't really have anything else to say on this other than that I'm actually super glad that I picked this semester and this class, and that I got to explore diaspora and diasporic literature. For myself, I got to experience my own personal growth in the idea that I could have access to this DNA and this ancestry, that I could then see where I had come from, how exactly I can put forth my knowledge so I can go forward in my life, observe the world with these different lenses that I have. I can sort of relate to the ones I'm most connected to and see if I can learn the ancestry of the ones that I'm distant from. I would like to research my Greek heritage. I would like to research my Balkan and my Icelandic and my German heritage, my Swiss heritage and my Polish heritage. I would like to understand what is going on that side of my family. And I would like to see how far I can get into my own personal growth, my own personal diaspora, because I have a loss where I have half my ancestry gone. I also have a loss in which my grandfather is gone. I have a loss in which I don't really talk to my family other than my mom and my grandma. I believe I have a lot of work ahead of me in order to see how best I fit in this world and how I can fill the gaps where I feel lost. Because before I even did this test, I knew I had gaps to fill. I knew that I wasn't exactly me fully. So now that I have this information, I can see what I can do with it, and hopefully I can try and fill certain gaps of diaspora and not feel as lost in myself and as lost in my world and my communities as I do currently. This is the end of my Creative Project podcast audio.